that it's Friday. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to 55 minutes of current and relevant business conversations here in Business Morning. I'm Ini John Mekwa, and we're starting off, as usual, from what's going on in the global oil space. We see a little change in the price of global oil, but they are on track for a second weekly rise. The stalemated US-Iran war has continued to disrupt supply from key Middle East producing regions. During the previous 5 days of gains, Brent gained more than 7%. WTI has gotten up more than 8%. And this has brought these two commodities to the highest level since July 24, and prices have climbed on concerns of inconclusive state of the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran that will mean that the continued curtailment of supply from major oil producers such as Saudi Arabia, Iraq, the UAE, and Kuwait, that is going to keep supply depleted. And the earlier peace deal between them has expired. It expired earlier this week, and there seems to be no effort by either side to restart talks. U.S. President Donald Trump is threatening economic retaliation against nations supporting Iran. And this week, the United Arab Emirates suspended all financial economic transactions with Iran until further notice, highlighting the fraught ties between the major Gulf Arab oil producer and Tehran. And all of this, we see a little bit of drop in the price of Brent, but it's still high up there, $93.47. WTI almost 0.5% down, just a bit of stability around there, $86.44 for a barrel. And the market yesterday, the local bourse in Nigeria continues in the negative territory. Yesterday, it closed down 0.30% at 240,037.80. Activity yesterday had more of greens compared to the previous trading session, but value closed in the red at 33.99 billion naira. Top gainers, HM Call, Nationwide Express, and MCME Calls, and top losers, Internet International, WAPIC, and FTG Insure. And top trades at FTG Insure, Sterling, and Transnational Express at the close of trade at the volume of 2.56 for FTG, 26 million for Sterling, and G and Transnational at 21.65. And so from the markets now, Guarantee Trust Holding Company PLC has secured an extension from the Nigerian Exchange Limited to delay the publication of its half-year audited financial statement for the period ended 30 June 2026. Although the financial results were approved by the group's board of directors on 28 July, mandatory clearance must be granted by the primary regulator before the figures can be released to the market. To remain compliant with exchange rules while awaiting the required approval, GTCO requested additional time, prompting the NGX to grant a new publication deadline of September 30, 2026. Reassuring investors over the revised timeline on Thursday, the Group General Counsel and Company Secretary says that the public should be assured that if the approval is received earlier, the company's interim audited financial statement would be released to the market earlier than the period approved by the NGX. And we know this is the second bank, the whole core company, requesting for this extension. The first was Access, and Access has until September 30, just like GTCO. United Bank for Africa PLC has approved its audited financial statements for the half year ended 30 June 2026, subject to clearance by the Central Bank of Nigeria. The approval was given at the bank's board meeting that was held on August 13, 2026, according to a statement signed by the lender. UBA said the Nigerian Exchange Limited and investing public should be notified immediately after receiving the CBN's approval for the half-year financial statement. The bank is also saying that its closed period would remain in force until 24 hours after the audited results are released to the public. The Tony Elumelu's investment in Seplat Energy has more than doubled in value, with his shares holding stake now worth over $1 billion. Hess Holdings bought a 20.07% stake in Seplat, representing about 120.4 million shares from French energy company Morel and Prom in December 2025. The deal cost about $500 million at that time. Since then, Seplat's share price has risen strongly in both the Nigerian exchange and the London Stock Exchange, pushing the value of Hess Holdings stake above $1 billion. And Geregu PLC has paid the 8th coupon and part of the principal due under its 40.085 billion Naira Series 1 fixed-rate bond. The company disclosed the payment in a statement to the Nigerian Exchange Limited and investing public on Thursday. According to the company, the payment was made to the trustees of the bond, covering both the interest obligation and part payment of the principal. The bond was issued under Geregu Power's Bond Issuers Program and has a total value of 40.085 billion Naira. The payment comes as the power company continues to meet its obligations to investors while addressing legacy matters that predate its current board. Geregu said the outstanding legacy issues would not affect its ability to meet its financial obligations. Let's say more around the financial market and the capital market this morning. We're looking at the roadmap that CSCS has in the market to push especially technology forth. We have the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of CSCS right here in the studio, Mr. Shehu Shantali. Mr. Shantali, good morning. Welcome to the studio. Good to have you physically.
Good morning.
Yeah, I thought you'd be in Abuja, but you know, we've seen our markets ranking really high, yeah? Do you see it happening this year? Because we've seen a lot of profit taking in the last couple of weeks, more than a month now.
Well, that's quite normal. The market operates in that manner. I mean, when you see the market, looking back at what had happened last year, I believe by the time we ended December 31st last year, the NGX, for example, the capitalization was at 99 trillion Naira. Now we're looking at a little under 160 trillion, about 156, 157. So that's how far the market has come. So yeah, year to date, the market has still done a lot, but it's quite normal. I think that's how the market operates.
And how is CSCS fitting into all the activities in the markets?
Well, as an important financial market infrastructure, we're doing our job. CSCS is the backbone of the market. We know that. As an important financial market infrastructure, what we do is to support the entire capital market. So yes, in terms of that, CSCS is doing everything possible, and as the market is doing well, we're also positioning ourselves to actually support the market in a better way.
Yeah, I believe technology is part of it. T+1 is the latest that has happened in the CSS. I don't think we have totally, gotten into the T+1, especially from the international investors' point of view. From the CSS, what technology are you presenting? What are you adding to make it seamless, the adoption of T+1?
So on the T+1, which is a very important topic, why T+1? And that's the question I get from most people asking me, why is Nigeria adopting T+1? Are we doing it early? Is it
the transition from T+2 and T+1 too short?
Exactly. So on the T+1, the question is, and I have to say it clearly, I think that transition to T+1 for us in Nigeria is one of the most important post-trade reforms that we've done in the country. And you ask the question why. Now, you look at the global markets globally. The market is at a point where globally we're at an inflection point. Now, when you look at the markets globally, the US markets, they transitioned to T+1 in 2024. Now, other markets like the EU, the Canada, and India, they're along the way. In fact, to mention India is actually the frontier of settlement innovation because they've actually piloted T+0 as we speak today. Now, you look at that and you ask the question, why again? So in Nigeria, we ask the question, what sort of infrastructure do we want to have? Now, because Nigeria's market does not operate in silo, it's in competition with the global markets, and that's a fact. Now, it's in competition with the regional markets in Africa and also with the global markets. Now, these investors, these global portfolio investors, the DFIs, they have now options like never before in history. So, as a country, we ask the question, how do we now cope? How do we now move in tandem with this market? And when you look at that, infrastructure matters. So for us, that T+1 is to make us more competitive and also to get us in line with what the global markets are doing. So yes, you asked the question of what the market is doing. We have reached that point. I believe on 1st of June this year, we transited to T+1. It was a lot of work. Now, because that took a lot of planning in place. And in getting there, there had to be planning, there had to be collaboration, and it was not just CSCS.
Do you have settlement risks with T+1, meeting up with the timing? I know, I believe SEC said it will now be 5 p.m., not 8 a.m. as it used to be. It's giving more time. But do you sense, are there concerns of settlement risks?
Well, we have not seen anything to actually point to that. Now, in any market, there are risks attached to it. T+2, there are risks. T+1, there are risks. So, yes, we haven't seen anything. So far from the time when we've actually transited, that was on June 1st, we have positive feedbacks from the market. And we have a situation room from that time, and nothing, to be honest, they've done an excellent job. So that situation room has a lot of the stakeholders from the market. So we're monitoring the market.
Is it a 24-hour situation room?
Yes, it is.
Oh.
We're monitoring the market, and we have positive feedback. So we're very confident that we're actually in the right direction.
And you know, a lot of investors do not have an idea of the technological backbone that should or that is holding forth this market. We know, yes, maybe you have an app, so you give a transaction, initiate it, and then you expect it. Maybe you should give us a little bit of, talking about the situation room you're talking about, give us a little bit of those things that we do not see, which is actually holding up the market and the expectations of investors not getting cut off. I know.
Well, that's true. I'll give an example, and let me give this example. You walk back to your house, your lovely house, and you expect the AC to work. You expect to go to the kitchen, and the gas is working, and the plumbing at the bathroom works. Everything has to be spot on. That's basically what the financial market infrastructure does. You don't think of all those things if it's working very well. That's exactly what CSCS does. Now, that energy, that infrastructure requires a lot of investments in technology. So we have done a lot of that. We have done a lot of upgrades over the years. And in getting to T+1, we've done a lot of upgrades. For this year alone, the amount of investments we've done in the human power in technology has been a lot. So especially that situation room, we have a team from every part of the market, every stakeholder is involved. So we're monitoring the market and we're monitoring the infrastructure, and so far to this date, we're happy that we have positive feedback from
There's no risk of cybersecurity?
Well, no technology company will tell you they're free of that.
Exactly.
So yes, cyber attacks are very, very, in our line of business, we see that. To give an example, for the last year, 2025, we've had over 7,800 attempted hits, which our system prevented. So the risks are there. But as an ISO 27001 certified infrastructure, we also have to improve on that always, and we're always investing in that. So there's always the risk. But for an FMI like CSCS and other global FMIs, what we do all the time is to improve on that. So cybersecurity is our backbone, and that's the core mandate for CSCS.
And any tips to investors, when it comes to the risk around the cyber security?
Well, what I would tell investors is, you see, we're in a market where every second determines outcomes. So I can say clearly that in this market, the most expensive currency is investor confidence. you have to be confident in the market to put your money in there. So if I ask you the question, what time did you sleep last night? You can tell me 8, 9, 10 a.m. or 10 p.m., which means if you're an investor in the market, you are confident enough to leave your money in the market and sleep at night. So that's how important it is for an FMI like CSCS. Investors get to sleep while we do the work. So we do the policing, we ensure that everything works very well.
And you don't charge us too much for it.
Well, the important question is, at the moment, I do not want to preempt. We're definitely going to come up with a communication for the market. CSCS and other stakeholders in the market, and credit to our regulator. We reached out to our regulator and our other stakeholders, and we've realized that we need to reduce the fees in the market. Now, it doesn't make sense that we're trying to grow the market and people are complaining about fees. So one of the things we have done is we've looked inwards and we've agreed on reduction of those fees. The reason is to encourage that adoption and for people to come into the market seamlessly and be able to trade in the market. Our focus is like the future, so we're actually investing in the future. So I'm glad to say that I don't want to preempt that, but in the next few days or next few weeks, you would see communication from CSCS. We've gotten the SEC approval on that, so we're
certainly looking forward to hearing that. That's always a joy, you know, and especially as we head towards the $1 trillion economy. Yesterday I was having a conversation about millionaires, new members of dollar millionaires.
True.
You understand, in the club. And my guest yesterday did say the capital market, the NGX to be specific, is a major place where, you know, one can tell. So we need those reduced fees so that we can encourage more participants and get more people to be dollar millionaires.
True, exactly. And you mentioned the international investors. For us to get to that $1 trillion economy, we need the foreign portfolio investors to invest in Nigeria. I mean, currently we're looking at about 12% of that. Historically, we've gone to a point where we had a 50-50 local, international, and that's our focus. And I'm happy to say that we're actually discussing, we're engaging them, and we're hopeful that in the next coming month, we should have more participation from the foreign investors.
All right, thank you so much. Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of CSCS, the backbone, the technology backbone of the market. Mr. Shehu Shantali, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me.
Good to have you.
Thank you.
Information System Audit and Control Association, they have been talking about the adoption of artificial intelligence here in Nigeria, and they had a meeting with their executives as well as journalists, and they say that they will be advancing conversations around digital trust, governance, cybersecurity, professional excellence amidst accelerated adoption of artificial intelligence. The body says that it celebrates 3 decades of existence. It is highlighting the need for stakeholders to interact with global leadership on the future of technology, digital trust, cybersecurity, governance, and the evolving role of technology professionals. At that meeting, they said that focus on the need for professionals to continuously develop their skills and competencies. Particularly, attention should be given to the importance of professional certifications.
AI is accelerating. There is no doubt about it. It's accelerating digital transformation. It's accelerating the need for digital trust. And AI today is also one of the challenges for us to make certain that that growth is controlled, and that growth can not only help countries develop new avenues for GDP growth, new avenues for enterprises to expand, but also in a controllable way that makes certain that we don't create greater risk for the populations that we serve. So as ISACA, we believe that we've got to get ahead of it. We are doing that currently, and we are working with a lot of different jurisdictions around the world, namely in Europe, North America, a little bit less in Australia, but in parts of Asia as well. And what we're trying to do is bring together a body of understanding and a body of knowledge that we can then take into the enterprises and make certain that the growth is harnessed, but also propelling forward.
For me, I think the problem with Nigeria is not about whether the policy exists or not, it's implementation. We also have, we have a director right now for artificial intelligence in Nigeria. We have several of those, there are policies everywhere in Nigeria. The challenge is implementation, not the, so we have enough policies, but what the challenge we're having is implementation. And I think with more advocacy through bodies like this, then we'll get more of the achievement of the implementation.
All right, now let's look at the new tax law. And it's been how many months now? We're in the 8th month of the year. That means it's 8 months. But let's do the first half of this year compared to the first half of last year, 2025, to see if there's been a difference, you know, in tax revenue, most especially since the adoption of the new tax law. So we see that for this year, 2026, about 49% increase in tax collection is what has been recorded. 49% year-on-year growth reported by the NRS and the presidency. Non-oil revenue accounted for 76 of the total of that. And the NRS replaced the FRS. We know that 4 major tax reform laws and national e-invoicing system were among all of that. So the bottom line is when we compare tax collection for the first half of 2025 and the first half of 2026, we see there an increase of 7.33 trillion naira, and that represents almost 50% growth year on year. So first half of 2025 was 14.27 and first half of this year 21.60 trillion naira. And non-oil revenue accounted for 76. NRS, of course, we know 4 major tax reforms is what we had beginning from January 2026. We see the numbers. What about the impact? Let's discuss that now with the lead partner at Cardinal Professional Services. Mr. Emmanuel Nosomi joins us virtually. Mr. Nosomi, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Amy. Thank you for having me this morning.
Great. So, fortunately, almost 50%, that's a huge increase, you know, and I guess it's worth celebrating. But let's remember that the essence of the reform was to increase the tax net. Can we say that this 49% increase in revenue shows an increase or a broadening of the tax net and not taxes in number?
Yes, thank you very much. I think that's one is for the NRS to celebrate. Among other promises that the new tax law actually put forward when the fiscal committee developed the framework the last time. If I can just objectively call out some of the promises that the new tax law promised every Nigerian, including the federal government, the taxpayers, and every stakeholder within the tax system. First is tax harmonization. There is a promise that across all levels, we'll be able to harmonize taxes and eliminate multiplicity of taxes. And I think that has fairly achieved in the consolidation of all the tax law that were implemented from 1st of January into 4 tax laws. But beyond the 4 tax laws, if you follow the news, you will see from the Manufacturer Association of Nigeria, where they publish in their confidence index that their members are still suffering, are still facing the difficulty of engaging with multiple tax collectors and agencies. That means that beyond just, the tax law becoming 4, the government needs to also be committed to seeing to it that, the collection of taxes reflect, simplicity and elimination of multiplicity that, is being targeted by that reform. The other objective that I would also like to point out is, the unification of revenue. and that could be seen in the numbers that you have spoken to. I think what the government has been able to do in this first half, of implementing this law is to put in place infrastructure, to see to it that tax collection is more digitalized, and then they are able to get more people to pay in taxes, particularly around the issue of VAT and the fiscalization of VAT. The subject of e-invoicing has assisted the federal government to ramp up VAT collection, and state governments are now smiling to the bank. You can see that has been the biggest, conversation on the table, even in the political space, where the federal government is very bold to say that state government are now collecting more money, and they are able to use more money at the state level. But the experience of the taxpayer, we also need to be able to speak to it. Has it been very, very good when it comes to some of these aggressive implementation from the NRS when it comes to digital collection? We saw a system change where some taxpayers were moved from the old platform, that's called the tax romance, to the Red 360, and many taxpayers actually suffered significant challenges transitioning to that new platform. At least I'm aware of many taxpayers that were unable to file their tax return as that went due, and they are facing consequences of penalty because of some of the glitches that were experienced with the system of transition. Also with e-invoicing, we've seen instances where the access point providers, the APP that have been designated by NRS, has come back with challenges with the cost of running the platform, and where taxpayers have to also cough out money to be able to meet the 31st July deadline for complying with that particular regulation. So it looks as if from the collection standpoint, the NRS may have won, the federal government may have won, but more attention needs to be paid to see to it that some of the benefits of the regime that was promised to taxpayers begin to also trickle down to the taxpayer, so that the government doesn't appear as the only winner in all of this.
So I'm glad you balanced it, from the taxpayers and the revenue collectors, the government in this case. And you also, of course, referred to the promises. But we can say that the small businesses, at least that category of promises, wouldn't you say those ones are being fulfilled at this time?
Yes. So the law is very clear. As a small business, if your revenue is below the small company threshold, then you are not expected to pay tax. But that we have just implemented this law for just 6 months. The cycle where these businesses will be filing returns is after the completion of the 12-month period, where they will know whether they have actually enjoyed that benefit. But those people that we can categorically say that have enjoyed the benefit of relieving the people at the bottom of the pyramid from taxes and focusing on the people that can really pay the taxes, the people that fall under the pay as you earn category or the personal income tax, where the first 800,000 has been exempted, and also the rent relief that was brought on the table by the federal government. What statistics has also shown it when HR department started implementing this provision. We realized that more than 70% of the people that are actually in the net for payee will not so much enjoy enough benefit from that 800,000 relief. That then suggests that government may need to reevaluate that threshold, so that more people can fall into that bracket that are able to earn that relief even in the face of the inflationary pressure in the economy, so that the micro side of things can be a bit more friendly for the masses in Nigeria.
Yeah, it sounds like it still fits into the conversation of translating the gains we see with the macro data to the micro. It seems that even when it comes to the tax reform too, there's a need to be more intentional about that.
Very correct, and give it to the government. Some of the policies that the government has embarked on is very, very effective. We begin to see that these policies are beginning to transit from the gestation period to the fruiting period, and businesses are beginning to stabilize, from the stability in the forest, and to the certainty when it comes to some of the tax law that would apply when it comes to doing business. But it is actually important that we pay attention to two things that typically speak to the micro side of things, which is the cost of food and energy that affects the masses. As long as businesses are thriving, but the masses are still facing the brunt of the economy, the government may not be able to earn the full credit for some of the policies. And this also applies in what we are seeing from the tax angle. Some of the thresholds that have been set, it appears that many households, will to benefit from that threshold because those thresholds just appear too low at the moment. So the government may need to consider reviewing those thresholds so that more people at the lower pyramid can actually benefit from some of these reliefs.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Emmanuel Nosomi, for helping us bring out, the performance and progress of the implementation of the new tax law in the country, at least in the first half of this year. Mr. Emmanuel Nosomi is the lead partner at Cardinal Professional Services.
Thank you very much, Eric.
Let's take a short break now. When we come back, we'll discuss tourism. Please stay with us. Welcome back. It's still Business Morning here on Channels Television, and we're discussing tourism now, especially how can we boost domestic activity instead of spending all of that money out there. That's what we'll be discussing. And we see, according to the federal government strategic blueprint, that they are targeting $500 million tourism market on Bonny Island. That's just one of the many plans. So that's the blueprint targeting $500 million tourism market. Right now, Continental Ranking has placed Nigeria as the second in Africa's hotel development rankings. The country can boast of 7,622 rooms across 50 pipeline hotels. Those are some of the things that we do have now when it comes to tourism in Nigeria, and we see the estimated revenue $12 billion. Key drivers: diaspora spending, corporate summits, global events. Dirty December, I'm sure, fits into that. Annual domestic tourists between 5 to 7 million. State-backed regional festivals. Carnival Calabar is top on the list among others, and local coastal gateways, and annual international visitors is about 1.8 million for this year. And of course, they look forward to that Dirty December, ecotourism, and festivals. Hotel pipeline capacity, we saw that 7,622 rooms. So how do we fill up these rooms now? That's what we want to hear from Mr. Babalola Marufuddin. He's a project manager at Actors Globe. Mr. Marufuddin, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
So we have always say everything, we have potential in this country. Tourism, of course, is part of it. Do you see intentionality in developing this tourism sector in the country, or we just, whatever happens, we put the numbers out and start talking?
I think, from my opinion, there's no intentionality behind it. It's like a goose has landed on our lap and we're doing our best to exploit it, but we're not really putting in the efforts that takes us to the next level when it comes to tourism. When you compare Nigeria to the likes of Rwanda, you see how much effort they're putting into tourism. Nigeria is really not doing anything.
What would count for intentional efforts from your point of view?
From my point of view, take into example Rwanda once again as a case study. They've made their guerrilla work, they've made it especially scarce and expensive because they are chasing quality over quantity. So for a guerrilla work, it costs about $1,500 per permit, and they issue about 96 daily. They've invested heavily in marketing with major partners.
But if we increase the price now, you people will say we are chasing away customers.
I think if you increase the price and the business itself is self-sustaining, because there's no point in a subsidized price and in the next 3 years you can't actually benefit from it
Because
anymore.
we used to hear a whole lot about Budukato Ranch.
Exactly.
We have a walkway there, long.
There's a cable right there,
Yes,
which is no longer
which,
functioning.
in fact, the last time I went to that area, I was advised, don't even think about it because it's really dangerous at this time. So I guess that's what you mean by investing in it.
Exactly. So we need to not just invest in the tourist centers themselves, we need to invest heavily in marketing. Look at Rwanda, what they've done, partnering with major clubs all over the world. You see major footballers across the world wearing Visit Rwanda on their jerseys. And this is reminding everybody across the globe that you need to actually visit Rwanda. It shows that Rwanda is putting in the effort. They are investing in people visiting their country. And you can see that the guerrilla work itself is self-sustaining. They don't need investors to come and donate. They don't need the government to intervene. Over the years, it has been sustained and it keeps going on. It keeps improving. But this is not the case in Nigeria, where we keep expecting the government to inject money into something. In the next 5 years, it is no longer functioning because there's.
So who should be injecting the money?
I think, first of all, you can open it to the public or the government itself, but make it self-sustaining. So if you inject it once, you don't have to come back the next 5 years to invest again. Once you invest in a particular tourist center, make sure it is self-sustaining. Create the business plan where the business itself can fund itself. So you don't need to come and fund it every 5 years again.
But we have a very brilliant Minister of Tourism.
Yes, I definitely agree with you on that.
So what are you saying, she's not thinking along this line or what?
Well, I think when it comes to tourism in Nigeria, we've focused so much on just Lagos and Abuja, and Nigeria is bigger than that. So Nigeria needs to expand and focus on other. We need to make flagship events out of cultural events like Calabar Carnival or
Which we have.
Exactly, which we already have. We just need to invest it, make it global, market it to people outside of the country so they can see the reason why they need to attend.
So, I mean, when you talk about self-sustaining and all of that, I did mention the issue with Calabar. And the truth is, if you wanted to go to that area now, the road there, or even even if you wanted to do air, I mean, if you talk about Rwanda, traveling to Rwanda now is really easy.
Yes.
They have Rwanda Air in Nigeria, and they make it as cheap as possible.
Exactly.
So all those are encouraging you. Paperwork, asking for visa and all of that, they found ways around that. I guess these are the areas where Nigeria as a country, especially in the area of infrastructure to the sites and even the festivals, I guess these are things that we might need more attention and intentionality on.
Yes, definitely, I agree with you on that. But I think we have more pressing matters than infrastructures and accessibility, because first of all, you need to consider the things that are limiting people from visiting these tourist attraction centers in Nigeria. And number one is access, like you mentioned. Nigeria visa application process is so tedious and it's so expensive. We charge about $2,000 for visa in Nigeria compared to Ghana, where they charge just $1,000. South Africa, they charge just a little over $700. Rwanda, for example, they charge $124 for a 2-year permit. So first, the visa needs to be more affordable, and secondly, the process needs to be reformed, because in Nigeria the technical infrastructure behind the visa application process is so tedious and is completely unreliable. So you can get to the embassy and they tell you they ran out of visa stickers and things like that. So they need to find a way to resolve these things before thinking about the infrastructure. Think about countries like Cairo, they have terrible road network, but you don't hear that about them because it's easy to get there. It's easy to, I think that's the smallest part. When you can find your way to the place and you forget the routes, how it took you to get there. When you're in the moment, you actually forget everything that it took you to get there. But imagine after going all through the stress of accessibility to get to the location in Nigeria and realize that the infrastructure is not even well maintained, it's not so convenient, you can't actually do what you came here to do, what has been marketed online. Let's say, for example, the cable ride in Budukato Ranch, you get there and the cable ride is not functioning, and that's exactly the reason why you came there. The frustration of the road network, everything will just accumulate together and you almost explode because you spend so much, and then upon getting there you still cannot achieve what you actually set out for. So I think these are things that we need to focus on. First is security, and the second is accessibility. So the visa should be reformed. The process, even if it's going to be expensive, let it be convenient for people to apply, so you don't have to go through a reasonable.
But we have visa on arrival now. I hear that's easy. I've not used it before.
Yes. Since 2024, it has been announced. The policy has been announced for visa on arrival and visa-free entry for about 17 African countries. But the implementation has not followed up with the same energy that they used to announce. So these things are easy to say on paper, but people that actually go through the process, foreigners that are coming into Nigeria, they go through unimaginable stress when they are trying to get their visa on arrival. So I think about a couple of weeks ago, there was a video trending online of a lady that traveled to Nigeria and hoping to get a visa on arrival, and she was sent back to her country. So I think these are things that we need to put into factor before we even talk about the infrastructure part. Of course, infrastructure is very important, but first you need to be able to access the infrastructure that you are looking for. So I think Nigeria, the government should focus more on that first, and then they can tackle the infrastructure later.
And these are jobs being lost. When we talk about unemployment in Nigeria, the tourism has the potential to create huge number of jobs.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you, and it's even way beyond just accommodation or hotel, because the tourism market is so wide now that you can work as a content creator, making storytelling videos about tourist locations. You can make video guide, destination content creation. You can even work as a middleman for booking platforms or for logistics services, and you find the audience yourself, act as a middleman, take your commission, and then hand them over to the original service providers. So there are lots of jobs on the table if the tourism market is actually functioning that people can actually benefit from. So I think, yes, I totally agree with you. There's a huge gap of job opportunity that's being left on the table with the not so functioning tourism market.
Not so functioning. Thank you so much for your time, Abalola Marufudin. He is the project manager at the Access Globe. Thank you for your time.
It's my pleasure.
Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll go global. Please stay with us. Yeah, it's time to go global now. We start from the United States. That news yesterday about the U.S. debts surpassing $40 trillion. That's a new record. We have our correspondent in Washington, Maria Bird, joining us to discuss the implications of this. Hey, Maria, good morning and welcome to the program. Hello, Maria, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, I can hear you now. So I was asking this issue of a new record high of U.S. debt. I mean, other countries like Nigeria were worried about our debt status. Is the U.S. worried also? Or, I mean, a lot of people think that the dollar can just be printed to meet up with whatever obligations are left.
Yes, the U.S. is a bit concerned, as you mentioned, around the U.S. debt, specifically because I think many Americans had expected that we would see an increase in the American debt. And now we're up to $40 trillion, as you stated and as we've been reporting. And specifically, what the concerns are really around the spending, especially with the Iran-U.S. conflict right now, and also other spending that has been as it relates to global conflict. Obviously, military utility is extremely expensive, and is typically what creates some of the challenge with the U.S. debt.
So what are the implications of this to the citizens especially?
Yes, many of the implications really regarding the U.S. debt are really going to be around what we're dealing with right now with inflation. The other issue is going to be around Americans being able to themselves come out of debt, because typically when the U.S. debt is challenged, we're also dealing with some debt challenges and a lack of access to capital for the everyday American. We know we've been talking quite some time now about Americans feeling a little short in the pockets and the everyday American not having all of what's necessary to live each and every day. And so that is one of the greater challenges that has been experienced. I think what we're also going to see is we're going to continue to see some rising in some of our yields. As we look at specifically like treasury bonds, those are going to kind of be an area many people, are looking at the market too. The stock market could be impacted by some of this. But the hope is that obviously as the debt continues to grow, though, that we are having some other areas that are going to offset. If companies are able to stabilize and able to bring some stabilization to some of what we've seen with the earnings reports over the last couple of days, I think we could see some recovery, but it's really going to be upon the Treasury Secretary to find a way to reduce our debt.
Well, President Trump had warned, I think that was last week or so, to prepare Americans to pay more for petroleum products.
Yes, and so, I think that the president has never been afraid of some of the challenges that many Americans might have felt around the debt. He believes there are certain things that have to be addressed. And obviously the president has a different way in which he addresses some of our economic challenges, specifically around reducing, as we know, when we saw major reduction in the federal government. So there are some other areas that he sees that we can find ways to reduce spending. And so I think there is a long-term strategy. The question, though, is how much of that debt, and as you were so right to mention, our debt has pretty much doubled, which I think has many wondering where is that going to leave the U.S. In the coming years.
All right, Maria. Well, just before we let you go, let's get a recap of trading of the markets yesterday.
Lottie. The U.S. stock market thought it had a relief on Wednesday, but on Thursday we saw a bit of a downward tick, as the Dow Jones led the day down in 1.32%, and the S&P 500 was down at 0.85%, and the heavy tech Nasdaq was down at 1%, as this was mostly due to what people are looking at in retail reports, as retail earnings reports showed a bit of a dip, as this made many concerned around companies like Walmart, major big box stores which are showing some bit of a challenge in their earnings reports. It's also clear that the oil prices are on the rise again, which means the U.S. economy could be a bit struggling. But only time will tell how the market will respond in the days and weeks ahead.
That's right, Maria. Only time will tell. Thank you for all of that from the United States there. And moving away from the U.S., the amount of Iranian oil that's readily available to Chinese buyers, that's rapidly running out, showing the effectiveness of the U.S. blockade of the country's ports at choking off revenue to Tehran. About 40 million barrels of the Islamic Republic's crude is sitting on the vessels near Singapore in an area that's popular ship-to-ship transfer location for oil leading to China. However, only 10% of that, or 2 supertanker cargoes, remain unsold. This is according to data intelligence firm. And still around that, ship owners, including Sinocor Group, are helping Saudi Arabian crude exit the Red Sea via the safer northern route as Iran-backed militants target the kingdom's export via the Bab el-Mandeb choke point in the south. State-owned Saudi Aramco has been exporting more oil from ports such as Sidi Karil in the Mediterranean Sea after Yemen-based Houthis started targeting ships that had loaded at the Red Sea export terminal at Yanbu. Over the past month, vessels controlled by South Korea's Sinocor and Norway's DHS management have been seen shuttling cargoes from Yanbu to Ain Sukna, where oil is discharged and piped north. In the United Kingdom, Britain's government recorded an unexpected budget deficit last month, a reminder of the financial constraints facing new Finance Minister John Haley ahead of this October budget. In spite of better news of the economy, the Office for National Statistics said that public sector net borrowing was £1.8 billion, and that's in July, as higher government spending caused by inflation contracted record self-assessed income tax receipts for the month. And still in the United Kingdom, retail sales declined in July, ending a 2-month run of growth as weaker clothing and footwear purchases weigh on consumer spending. Figures from the Office of National Statistics show that retail sales fell 0.5% month on month, following a revised 0.7% increase in June. The decline is slightly worse than the 0.4% fall that economists had expected. Still in the United Kingdom, banking sector is warning the government that a proposed windfall tax on lenders could weaken the country's international competitiveness and threaten jobs and investment. Industry body UK Finance, representing major banks including Barclays, HSBC, Lloyds and NatWest, they are asking Chancellor John Healey to avoid further tax increases on the sector ahead of the October budget. In France, private sector unexpectedly weakened this month as extreme summer temperatures are taking tolls on the service sector. S&P Global's Composite Purchasing Managers Index declined to 48.8% in August from 49.4%. And in Asia, Japan's consumer inflation accelerates in July, adding to expectations that the Bank of Japan could raise interest rates again as price pressures strengthen. Headline consumers went up 1.9% year on year from 1.6% in June. And this is the third consecutive month of acceleration in inflation. That's Global News and Business Morning for today. Thank you so much for being a part of it. Do remember that you can watch Business Morning at any time on our YouTube channel, but I'll be back just before you miss me. I'll be back at 1:30 with Business Incorporated to give you another round of updates on Business Incorporated. I'm Minnie John McCall. I'll talk to you then.